Welcome to Focused on Forward. The purpose of this podcast is to focus on recovery from life situations, be it a disease, chronic or acute, perhaps the loss of someone so dear to you in death, or a change of life patterns that has affected you so profoundly that you have no choice but to find your new normal and become focused on moving forward. Each episode is designed to show the positivity that people bring to each and every one of their stories, the successes they've had, ways that they have become so definitively focused on moving forward. We look forward to sharing their stories, and we hope that they inspire you just as much as they have inspired us. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Focused on Forward. Today we're going to talk with Shannan Wilson. Now Shannan has a very varied background, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but she's a singer, she's an actress, but the reason we're talking to her today, she has a very touching backstory about what happened with her and her family, and what the result of that was a beautiful book called The Littlest Peanut. And if you know of anybody whose children have had to spend time in the NICU, this is a must-have for those parents. It's a beautiful book. It's a wonderful book. I can't say enough good things about it. And I'll be honest, I truthfully kind of choked up a little bit looking at it. It's that wonderfully done. So Shannan, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're excited to have you and excited to hear about your story and how we got to where we are at.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You don't realize the challenges you can have when you don't hear about pregnancy challenges until you have challenges. And then suddenly you hear what can go wrong, what can happen. You just assume that you get pregnant and that it's just going to be super easy and you'll have the baby and everything will be like hunky dory. But I was pregnant with my daughter, our first child, and great pregnancy. I was exercising. I felt great. No sickness. And at 34 weeks, I had a premature rupture. So it was just out of the blue, and I had her early. And she was in the NICU for about 3.5 weeks. And it's so scary because you really don't know what to expect when you have a premature baby. And the hospital that I was in, it's Virtual Voorhees. It's a fantastic hospital, but it was the older hospital. Since then, they've built a brand new facility. But at the time, it was the small hospital, and we were all in one room with other NICU parents. So just that environment of seeing really sick babies and parents who are really stressed out, crying, getting bad news. You're really in this room, and it's a pretty intense experience. It was for us anyway. So Kendall went home, and about, I don't know how many, not many months later, I got pregnant again, and then had a miscarriage at 8 weeks. So that was pretty hard to deal with. Then I got pregnant with my son, Breck. And my doctor told me, he's like, it's just random. Don't worry. You won't have another, you shouldn't have another premature baby. That premature rupture was just, a fluke. And so then at 17 weeks, had a placental abruption. And that's a really serious and severe condition for both the mother and the baby. And we were told by the doctor, he said, I don't know what your beliefs are, if you believe in God, but basically it's in God's hands. It's either going to get worse or it's going to get better.
Oh, wow.
So just coming out of already having a baby in the NICU and seeing the stresses of macro preemies and micro preemies and what they have to go through, I was fully aware of the complications of having a micro preemie or a macro preemie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I wasn't naive, or my husband and I weren't blind going into it this time around. So it made it even more challenging.
Yeah, I can see how it could be both helpful and challenging at the same time, because you have an expectation of what you're going to go through. And so if it doesn't fit those expectations, that's going to insert or create a different level of challenge, I would imagine.
Yeah. when you don't have any expectations and you have no idea, you're like, oh, it'll be okay. Seeing all of the sick babies, and especially a boy. I don't know if your listeners know this, or if you even know this, but it goes by race and it goes by gender, the strength of a premature baby. So for instance, so the strongest are Black female babies.
Oh,
They do
wow. Okay.
they just thrive, and they call them weak white boys because the white males do, I hate to say the worst, but they have the most complications. So my son was a white boy, and I went on bed rest at 17 weeks. I had a baby. I mean, they're 20 months apart. So I was also running a business at the same time. And
Okay.
just knowing that I needed to get the number in my head that I had was 30. I just knew I needed to get to at least 30 weeks, because I knew anywhere between 17 to 24, 17 to 23 weeks, the complications that were going to, with lungs and feeding. So I just kept visualizing the number 30, and I had him at 30 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I made it that far along. And he's now 13 and my daughter's 15.
Okay.
And Brett my son came out breathing on his own. They put him on oxygen for just a minute, and he came out breathing on his own. And it's really miraculous how
That's amazing.
well he did. Yeah.
That's amazing that he was able to breathe on his own then.
I know.
So, and here's a question out of just because I'm unfamiliar. So, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you know, great. If not, I will do some Google research after we're done talking. Now, what's the difference between a placenta? Because you said you had a placental eruption.
Abruption.
Abruption. What's the difference between that and a placental tear?
It's kind of the same.
Kind of the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Because my wife had with our daughter, who's our youngest, whose name also happens to be Kendall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got that going. My brother's name is Shannan, so we got some similarities here. But Shayna had a placental tear with Kendall.
Well, I don't, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Maybe abruption sounds more severe than a tear, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to do some research on that to see what the difference is.
So if the tear was just a minimal tear, was she bleeding? Is that how she knew?
Yeah.
She was spotting.
Yeah, we were worried that we were gonna. There was worry from our OB that we were going to have a loss, because. Yes. So I mean, she was on bed rest. She was, limited in movements and things. So yeah.
It's scary because that's, mothers can bleed out from that. So if it tears off the wall completely, and I actually was, when my daughter was in the NICU, one of the NICU, and by the way, when my son was in the NICU, we knew all the nurses at this point because we were just there. They were like, "Are you back? Are you seriously back with another premature baby?"
Oh, sure, yeah, it hadn't been that long.
Yeah, but on a serious note, one of the NICU nurses came in and was holding a full-size looking baby. And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's the biggest preemie I've ever seen." And someone leaned over and they said, "The mother just died. The mother just bled out." And you're just like, I mean, it's those things, those stories were all in this room. And like now they have separate quarters and they have separate rooms where you get to be on your own. But for us, we saw all that. And you just don't ever forget that emotion that you feel and that just happened. You know?
That would be heartbreaking to have heard.
So,
oh man.
About the I guess about the idea I had about the book was just when you have, at the time, I had a baby book for my daughter, but nothing matched a preemie. It was like for healthy babies. So I was scratching out the time, or scratching out the weight, scratching out the weeks because it wasn't matching up because she was earlier than she should have been.
Sure.
And so I started writing poetry and just thinking, God, I wish there was a book that matched what I was going through, and thought it in my head and came up with that idea. And then I put it all away after I had her. Didn't think about it again until Breck was born. And then I came up with the thought again of the Littlest Peanut and how we needed a baby book for parents that have babies in the NICU so that they have stuff to write about, because our milestones are so different than a normal baby. And I'm saying normal in quotations, a normal baby's milestones. But
Oh,
the
absolutely.
milestones of a premature baby or in a baby in the NICU are, you know, they're really important to us.
Well, yeah, and that makes absolute sense because I think about it, not having had gone through that myself, but I have several friends who have had children go through, having children go through the NICU and that's the reason why I was so impressed when you said that your son was breathing on his own right away at that age, because I know of several who their children were in for, couple weeks to a couple months, depending on the child and the circumstances. But the problems that they were having with getting the child to be able to breathe on their own, and they were having to, incubate and
Yeah,
some of these other things. And so, yeah, so when you say that there's different milestones, I think you're absolutely spot on with that,
right.
from my vantage point anyway. um
Yeah, just
you
to get
know
him out of the ice when they get out of the isolate. And Breck had to be in an isolate. He had jaundice. He did all of, he definitely had. It's hard because in the NICU, your babies, the nurses said they'll do really well at the beginning. You think, oh, they're strong, there's no problems, and then they can digress. So that's each step is a big deal. I mean, for a 30-weeker, okay, so he comes out strong, but he can get an infection so quickly. Or
sure.
the brain scans, they do a brain scan and you don't even think about that. And the brain scans can tell if there's bleeding on the brain because that's very common with a premature baby. So you just have like all of the stress. And, I went back to the NICU with my books because I wanted to donate some. I wrote the book in 2011 or had it published. And I walked in and I just started like I never experienced PTSD before until then. And then a nurse, she said, you're having PTSD. 99% of women who have premature babies that come back to the NICU have it. And I
Yeah.
had it's so overwhelming. And any parent will tell you when they go back, it's the smell, the stress, it's crazy.
Yeah. The only thing I can relate to that with, I was telling you about before in the pre-show, I was telling you about the story of our daughter, Kendall, who went through her issues last year. Um, after we were all done with the ICU, and we came close to losing Kendall at least twice.
Mm.
Um, just the thought, because we were taking gifts up to the ICU, because I will say this, that the nurses in the ICU and the doctors in the ICU who deal with kids, um, I want to give every one of them a hug. They're amazing,
They're angels. Yeah.
beautiful. Oh my God, beautiful people. I can't say enough good things about them. To be able to do what they do, and I would crumble every day.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not built for that type of thing, and I think it's beautiful that there are people who are, and that they can do it, and they do such an amazing job at it. But
I agree.
we put together this little gift package, and we had these cups printed up, and these like little, because all the nurses sit at their tables, and they got these little cups with this, the tumblers with the straw matching straws in them and all that kind of stuff. And so we had some cups printed up, and just the thought of going back into the ICU and having to go into that room. I couldn't even go into the hospital. For me, I started hyperventilating a little bit and had to kind of pull back. Um, going to the rehab hospital that we had to go to, that was no problem for me. I could go into the rehab hospital and sit there and talk with those nurses and see them. And
Yeah.
but that was fine. Um, but there's no way that I could go to even just going to the general hospital area, because the children's hospital in Grand Rapids is attached to the main hospital. There's a kind of like a corridor that combines the two.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we had a friend in the main part of the hospital, just to go visit him. I walked in and I was kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
I could do this. And both my wife and I were both kind of that way. So I understand fully that onrush of emotion.
Yeah, it takes you by surprise too. You wouldn't think, like you think, I'm not at war. I wasn't at war. You always think of PTSD with people who have
Soldiers, yeah.
experienced war or trauma, and then you don't realize you went through trauma. That is a traumatic experience when you have a sick child. There is nothing more stressful than having no control over the health of your child.
Absolutely. That was one of the things when we came home. I had to get some counseling. I went and had some therapy. And that's one of the things my therapist had to help me understand, was that it was okay for us to feel the way that we were feeling.
Yeah.
Because there was definitely some trauma that had occurred. There was definitely
Mm-hmm.
some issue there. Okay. So how did you handle it, post hospital? So you had Kendall, you brought her home,
Yep.
then you had
Correct.
Breck,
Oh,
but in the meantime there was a miscarriage in between the
mm-hmm.
two. But then you had Breck and you had to go back to the NICU. How did you handle it post hospital? What was the mental emotional state for Shannan Wilson like at that point?
It's, I don't even remember some of it, because I think, when they were building the new hospital, I was on a focus group. I don't even remember being on this focus group
Oh
as
my.
as part of the NICU to help build the NICU. I don't, isn't that so, I mean,
Wow.
that's how
Yeah.
mine works. And I realized it later when they said, because I became involved with the NICU a little bit after that, but it was just, I mean, I had, as I said, they're 20 months apart, and I was running a nationwide promotional company. It was at its peak, it was very successful. So I had all of that. And then I had the two babies, and I was on this focus group, and I guess I sat in on some meetings and helped them design different things. And I swear to you, I don't remember doing that.
Wow.
And there's just certain lapses of memory that I have. And I think that, I mean, you're also nursing, everything is just zapped from you. And I just remember driving to the NICU and being so dehydrated, like so dizzy, thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so dizzy, but you're so fatigued. You're
Mm-hmm.
so tired. You're not sleeping, especially when your kids are that close together. And Breck was so little. He was so tiny and so early. Yeah, that's how I handle it. I think I just kind of marched forward and just tried to stay positive. And I just lived day by day.
Okay.
Every day it was just like I couldn't look ahead.
Sure. No, that makes absolute sense. You're handling what you had to in the moment. Your plate was pretty full at that point, so that makes total sense to me. So
And my family's in Texas, so I didn't even have any family out here. My husband's amazing. But I didn't, none of my sister, brother, parents, everybody's out down, in Texas. So I didn't have family here.
okay. So everybody that I talk to, and there's a turning point in what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with it, and when they come to kind of grasp the terms of what they've dealt with. What was the turning point for you when you said, okay, this is what I'm dealing with?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. And I remember it very well because I was so my son was born June 27th. And I came back. It doesn't seem like it's that long later, but my mother-in-law, who is out here, she kept saying, you're handling this so well, Shannan. You're so strong. Are you okay with Breck being in the NICU? And I was being just very stoic. And I remember it was the 4th of July parade in our town. And I was watching the parade go by, and I just lost it and started crying, standing there on the street. My son was in the NICU. I had just gone through this with Kendall. And that was the first time that I actually just let it all go. I don't know why it was. I don't know what the trigger was. And my mother-in-law said to my husband, she's like, I was wondering when she was going to do that. I was probably just brimming for like a year and a half. But that right there was like, okay, this is messed up. This is like so crazy right now. I just had another premature baby. That was that moment of just kind of clarity of what I was dealing with.
Okay.
Because you really, as you know, you just have to, I think I said it before, you just really have to march forward. And it's not about us, is it? It's about them. And you're just trying to be so strong and positive, and you don't want any sort of bad thoughts seeping into your brain. And I'm sure you're a pretty positive person anyway, but we're also pragmatic and realistic. So that makes it challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. For us anyway, it was the trying to be positive because, we're talking with our daughter who's scared. She didn't know what was going on around
She's
her.
12, yeah.
She's 12. There's all these things changing. She went from being a healthy girl, because 2 days before we went to the hospital, my daughter loves to sing. And I'm a little bit biased, but I think she has a beautiful voice.
That's nice.
And she was in her school's talent show and she was
Mhm.
singing. And she said she didn't feel the greatest, but it was March in Michigan and it's always kind of drippy, rainy weather. There's a lot of sniffling going on in Michigan during the month of March. That's not uncommon. A lot of sore throats. That's not uncommon. You get muscle fatigue and soreness because of the colds that get passed around, especially in schools. They're little germ factories.
Mhm.
So we didn't really think anything of it. But we were trying to be positive for her, and I think it's interesting. As I think you said it right, as parents, we try to be positive about what's going on around us, but there's also realism that sets in. And no matter how positive you're trying to be in that hospital setting, there's going to be a moment where reality just kind of smacks you right in the
Mhm.
face. um and we had our own shares with that, but yeah, I think that's a very interesting statement. So let's take a minute and talk about your book, if you don't mind. I
Mhm.
know you mentioned it a minute ago, but so what how did you come to the point of deciding that I need to write a book about this? I know you said earlier that you had your own baby book and you were kind of scratching things out, but you know it's one thing to sit there and scratch it out and go, okay, this doesn't really fit my needs. But when did it click for you that this is something that needs to be?
I've always wanted to publish something. That's always been a goal of mine. So
Okay.
when I thought of the Littlest Peanut, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is something that I've kind of wanted to do. It can give back, it can help. And my brother-in-law is an amazing artist. He can do any medium. And I had in my head what I wanted, but I can't draw. But I knew I could visualize what I wanted. And so after I had Breck and went back to the drawing board and thought, I made each page what I wanted the milestones to be and what I wanted the pictures to be. And I had Joe draw them out.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Okay.
yeah. And then I went through a company to have it published. I know now, and anybody that wants to publish their book, they can just do it on their own. They don't have to pay a lot of money. They don't have to pay money to do it. You can do it on your own.
Right.
At the time, I didn't realize that. It's not that I paid a lot of money, but you can do it on your own. So then I realized this is just, there was nothing like that out there. So it was the first one. Because there was a lot of medical books about premature babies, but nothing fun. Now there's so much more. There's so many more options, which is great for parents.
Yeah.
Uh, that's
No,
what
that's
happened.
cool. No, and I want to say this too about your books. So out of all the things I see on Amazon, and my wife and I have been Amazon Prime members for, oh God, I think since the moment that Amazon said, "Hey, we'll
Mm-hmm.
ship things for free for 2 days." Um, I mean, I can count on one hand the number of things that I've seen with a 5-star rating. More than 5 ratings. You have 216 reviews on Amazon, and they're all 5 stars.
Except for the one from Corgi Lover.
Well, it's a corgi lover. Come on. We have a corgi. It wasn't us, I promise.
Oh, please. I hope not.
But but yeah. It's okay. So you have all but one, the one person who clearly didn't get the memo.
No, and she said there was no visitors page. All of her information was incorrect too. That still irritates me. It's from like 4.5 years ago. I've written to her. I'm like, dear Corgi Lover, you have non-factual things in your review. Can you
Right.
please change the review? She never has.
But yeah, I mean, to see the ratings,
Thank you.
I think it's kind of indicative of uh, of what you're providing, and I think that the fact that you have such high reviews on it, I just want to commend you for writing such a wonderful book that helps people out and provides something, you know, that wasn't there before. That wasn't.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
to hear the stories from people, I shipped out a case today. I do like to give out cases to parents will reach out to me, and sometimes they'll say we want it to be in memory of, because the baby in my book, I didn't have the baby go home. I didn't have it.
Right.
And some people have said, oh, you didn't have when they went home. And I said, because not all of them go home.
Sure.
And I didn't want that to be in there. And I wanted them to have a memory book of that time that baby was there. So I didn't do it go home at the end. And So parents will reach out and I hear these unbelievable stories of just strength and courage that these parents have, and even these babies, my gosh. And so I'll donate quite a few cases or books to them so that they can bring them to their NICUs.
Yeah, even just the reviews themselves, people talking about their experiences. Some of
Yeah.
them are people who actually work in the NICU. Some of them are talking about their children who were born at, I think I saw one that was born at like 26 weeks, just woof,
Even earlier. Some of them were so
yeah.
much earlier. I stay in contact with a lot of them too. They'll reach out to me every Christmas. They're like, Shannan, they'll have different organizations like
Oh, that's
Cullen's
awesome.
Miracle. Yeah, Cullen's Miracle is a good one. I love her. And they'll reach out every Christmas, and they put their gift bags together for the NICU. So it's a wonderful way to give back. And the sales of it help for me to print. This is our 4th edition. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, the 4th edition. So I'm able to pay for more printing, which is a great company.
Nice.
Warzala. Yeah, Warzala does the printing. They're a great company out of Wisconsin.
Okay, cool. I did not realize it was the 4th edition. No, that's cool. So yeah, guys, if you're looking for a gift for someone who has a child who's premature, spending some time in the NICU, boy, get them this. Go to Amazon, check out the Littlest Peanut. It's very touching. It's beautifully done. And I think that you guys will be very, very glad that you got that, either for yourself, if this is something that you're enduring, and if you are, our prayers are with you for sure. And if not, but someone who is, then by golly, go check this out. And I think you'll be thrilled that you will have bought the Littlest Peanut.
Thank you. And they can go to littlestpeanut.com too. Littlestpeanut.com.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, where was the best way for people to be able to get information? So littlestpeanut.com is where they can.
Yeah, littlestpeanut.com.
The Littlest Peanut. Okay, very good. All right, so yeah, and we'll make sure that when this conversation goes out live to the masses, that will include that information on the link, so that people can look that up as well and find you easily. So I have 2 more questions for you, Shannan, before we call it a day. Okay. So there's one question in particular, and I like to ask this of every single guest that I have on the show. And so here it is.
Okay. I'm nervous.
Oh, please don't be nervous. It's not that big. But looking back over the entirety of all your experiences, and not to shrink it down to one sentence or anything like that, but what's the single greatest lesson that this has taught you? What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is really that you can't control everything, that you really have to have just faith and whatever that means to you, right?
Sure.
And that you have to let go of that control and just kind of ride the wave that's given to you at that moment, and just also take care of yourself too. Just be forgiving. Also forgive yourself, because there's guilt as a parent when your child's not feeling well. I had 2 preemie babies, and I blamed myself for different things. It also doesn't help when people ask you what you did. When people are like, what did you do? What happened? You're like, F you.
Yeah, I understand that.
Right? So I know I just answered it in more than one way, but I think all of those things were just the lessons that I learned.
That's fine. They're all highly appropriate and applicable. So yeah, I think when Kendall was in the hospital, we had, people writing us, emailing us, text messaging us, well, what vaccination did you give her? What did you do about this? What did you do about that? And it was just like,
unbelievable.
It doesn't matter how it got there. The fact is that she's here, and this is what we're dealing with. So yeah, I can't even imagine. You go through enough guilt as a parent in that situation as it is. I can't imagine having the gall to ask that questions. But
I think they just don't know what to say.
Yeah, well, that there's that. I'm sure. All right, here's the second of the 2 questions. What is the single greatest piece of advice that you were given that helped you get through this?
Well, I have the quote in my book from Milton Berle: laughter is an instant vacation. Okay. Because that advice, just finding laughter, and I have that in my book too, find laughter. I wrote that in there. The advice that you just have to find humor. And so that quote stuck with me. I think I read that during something happened, one of the stressful days. So it wasn't exactly somebody giving me advice, because nobody really had advice to give me about that, but just that. And so I love that quote so much, and it made me think. So I think that's just really good. That was good advice from Milton.
I love it. That's excellent advice. Because again, going back to our own experiences, I think had we not tried to find humor, because my daughter and I are both kind of sarcastic, jokey people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that had we not tried to find ways to have a laugh, share a laugh, I think it would have done, well more psychological and emotional damage than it did.
You have to find humor, and no matter what the situation is, and there's humor there to be had. Comedy is drama. So
absolutely. I'll agree 1,000%. All right, cool. All right, so Shannan, tell us about Shannan Wilson outside of being the awesome peanut author. So what do you got going on? We mentioned earlier that you're an actress and that you do that there's some singing as well. So tell us about those things, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm pretty resourceful, and I find different ways to be creative and find hobbies. So about 5 years ago, I decided I'd like to try acting, and went into New York and took classes and started auditioning, and got a good manager who believed in me, Georgianne at CPM Talent. And yeah, this year I've shot, I did a film called Snow Babies. I play the mother of a heroin addict, a 16-year-old honor student heroin addict. And that's on Fandango now. It was supposed to be in theaters, but because of COVID. So that's on Fandango, and that's on, you can stream it on Amazon.
Okay.
That was released on September 29th, and that's a feature. And then I just shot Halston with Ewan McGregor. He's playing Halston.
Okay.
And that'll be on Netflix. It's a Ryan Murphy production. And I play an affluent socialite named Bobby Mahoney, who is an actual person.
Okay.
And Halston's a fashion designer from the 70s. It's his story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So nice. You've got a couple nice things going on there in the acting realm. So I saw something about Spotify and singing and.
Yeah, I record music. I record songs. There's a great guy named Jim Heffernan, Jimmy, and he was a Nashville artist, studio musician, played with Joe Diffie and Brad Paisley and Grand Ole Opry, and he's been in Nashville. He was in Nashville for a long time, and he lives the town over from me. So someone told me you should reach out to Jim. This was about 4 years ago, because he has a studio. So I've recorded about 6 songs with them. We're working on a new one now. And yeah, they're on iTunes and Spotify. My songs are. And I was just looking at CD Baby, because you can upload them and you can see your little quarterly royalties. Got 21 cents right now for this quarter. Because each time it streams, it's like 0.000012 cents. Like, it's hilarious to look at. So if you hit like $8, you're like, wow, I am making it here.
I was joking around with my wife. So the service that I use for for this podcast pays me a penny per listen.
Yeah, that's better than me.
And I laughed because when we hit the $20 mark, I was like,
yes.
I looked at my wife and I'm like, we can go to Applebee's, baby, 2 for $20. All right, let's do this.
That's a lot of listeners, though. You have to look at it that way.
Oh, I do, and I'm extremely grateful. But I just, that's my sponsorship. I get I get a penny a listen. I'm not. Yeah. But like I told somebody else, if I was doing this to try to get rich, I'm going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, you're doing it for the love of it. I've never done anything to make money. I have honestly never done anything thinking, oh, I'm going to be rich. I just always thought of things that made me happy, and I found ways to do that. And then if money comes or success comes, it kind of just falls into place, but it's never the intent.
Right. Oh, this is totally a passion project of mine.
Yeah.
And I enjoy this thoroughly. I take a great enjoyment of being able to participate, even in a small way, in somebody's story and help them share their story. And I find a lot of strength and encouragement in other people's stories, like yours today. There's That's beauty nice. in people's stories and what they've gone through and learning from their lessons in life. I think there's so much that can be shared with humanity that way. So.
Right. I agree with you. We're all very similar. We people like to point out differences, but we all really are much more similar than we think.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Okay. And so, Shannan, where can people go to find out about your movies and your music? What's a good site for that?
I guess my website, Shannon with an A. So it's SHANNAN Wilson.com. And that has my music and the films that I'm working on. I'm working on a Christmas movie too. We shot that on Tuesday. It was very cold. I play a South Philly mob boss's wife, Martina Maureen. So that's fun. So I guess my website, and if you just Google my name, Shannan Wilson, all that stuff pops up.
All right, cool. We'll make sure to include all those links, okay?
Thank you.
And include that as well. So, guys, thank you for listening today. And Shannan, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your story. And I know you mentioned it earlier, but I just want to make sure that everybody's clear. Your children are doing well, correct?
Yes, you would. Yes, they are doing fantastic.
All
Thank
right.
you.
That's a
And
good
Kendall's
note.
doing well. Kendall's good.
Yeah, we're doing better. There's some residual things that we're dealing with because of Guillain-Barré. It's a lifelong autoimmune issue. So she'll have some complications, but we're doing better now than we were a year ago. So we'll take that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so happy to
So
hear that.
yeah, we're progressing. So, but yeah, again, thank you for being on. It's been a joy to talk with you today.
Yeah, I've loved it. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, that's going to conclude us today for Focused on Forward. Well, that concludes another episode of Focused on Forward. To be a guest of Focused on Forward, you can reach us through Twitter at podcastfof, through our Facebook page named Focused on Forward, or through email focusedonforward@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing each and every one of your stories that has yet to be told. So until then, be safe, be kind, and be loving to one another as you stay focused on forward.